Welcome to the podcast where mental health is at the core of what we focus on. We strive to develop people like you to maximize who you are and what you've been called to do by sharing tools and resources for better brain health. And now here's your host, Juan Garcia.
Hey, welcome back everybody to our podcast. Thank you so much for those of you that have subscribed and you're sharing all these videos. Thank you. That's how we can get the word out. If you would just take a moment to subscribe and hit that notification bell so that you know when we have another video out. And those of you listening, subscribe. We're on iTunes, we're on Google Play, we're on Spotify, we're on all different types of platforms that I haven't even heard of, so to be honest with you. But thank you so much for your support in this. Today, I want to talk to you about the Amygdala Hijack. Now, some of you have probably heard this, some of you have probably experienced it, and all of you will now know how to best handle emotions. Why? Because there is this small gland in our brain called the amygdala. It's like an almond-shaped size gland, and it is so important for our functioning when it comes to our emotional responses. Now, a lot of people are going back to work after the restrictions have been lifted. A lot of people are back in the office and they're interacting with their coworkers, supervisors, managers, all different types of personalities. You were doing Zoom calls and now you're back at the cubicle, the office, you're back at the center, you're back at that place where now you're interacting with people. Obviously now you have masks on, you're social distancing, you have all of these things in play. And so emotions are heightened because we have to be extra aware. There's a video that I just saw which kind of confirmed that I should do this topic. So there's, I don't want to say her name, but there's a nurse from the state of Indiana who went on a rant on social media, and it had to do with, the social injustices that we're hearing about and we're experiencing as a country, and the racial, insensitivity that exists. And she just went on a rant, and people posted it or reshared it, retweeted it. And now she got fired, and people are also asking for the state of Indiana to revoke her nursing license. That's how bad it can get when we don't have control of our emotions. Whether you agree with her, disagree with her, here's the bottom line. Just because you feel like saying something doesn't mean you should say it, especially on social media. And she just went on a rant, and it cost her job, potentially can cost her license. Bottom line, it cost her integrity. People will not want to deal with her. Companies, hospitals, whatever she wants to do, she is going to have a hard time doing it because she just allowed her emotions to get the best of her. So this is why EQ is so important. What is EQ? EQ is emotional intelligence. We know about IQ, which is your actual intelligence. EQ is emotional intelligence, and it's been broken down into 4 areas. So you are emotional intelligent when you are self-aware. That's number 1. When you are socially aware, when you are actually self-managing, you're taking care of yourself, and when you are managing your relationships also. So these are 4 areas that we must have a lot of energy and a lot of focus put into so that we have very high or very high functioning emotional intelligence. This is very important because a lot of companies and organizations are also looking to measure EQ. And they do it in interviews, they do it in meetings, they do it in different methods because I train in this area. So I know that companies and organizations are looking for EQ. So be on the lookout for understanding your self-awareness, your social awareness, your self-management. Are you taking care of yourself? Are you taking care of your mindset? Are you taking care of your body that affects your mind? All of these things you have to be aware. And also, are you taking care of your relationship awareness? Are you making sure that you are dealing with your relationships in a healthy way? All right. So having said that, the reason why I put it in that platform is because your emotional intelligence has everything to do with your amygdala, and your amygdala has everything to do with your emotional intelligence. One of the other things that I have said in the past is also that your brain and your mind are separate but inseparable. And the amygdala gland is an example of what I mean. So, for those of you that don't know what an amygdala is, the amygdala is a small gland, as I said earlier, that it's in your brain. And what it does, it's mainly known for when it feels like it's being threatened. So it alerts you, and it begins to fight for you, or it begins to make you want to flee from the situation. So, for example, you walk outside your house, you go to the backyard, and there's a possum or a raccoon in the backyard, and you freak out, right? You react, or at least I would, and you're like, whoa! So you either go after it to say, shoo, get out of here, whatever you want to do with it, throw a little thing at it to distract it, or you run the other way, right? I've done both. So your amygdala is key for that to be able to happen, because it shoots, or it secretes this adrenaline, which is, a hormone that we have, and cortisol. And it pumps you up to either go or retreat. So that's why knowing the function of the amygdala is so important. The problem is that if we feel threatened emotionally, the amygdala does not know how to make the separation of the two, or the distinction of the two. It will respond. Adrenaline will pump. Cortisol will pump through your veins, and you would have to do something about that. And so what I want to do is help you, number one, identify it. Number two, how to best handle it. And number three, how we can do practices that will prevent from the amygdala hijacking us. And how does that happen? Well, what happens is we can feel threatened emotionally. Someone said something, a slur, something insensitive. Whether it's true or false, at this point, it doesn't matter for this example that I want to share with you. What matters is your amygdala immediately is going to be an alert. And so what you want to do is you want to recognize that this is affecting you, or it wants to do something about it. But you have control. You have to remind yourself that you have control. Because the reason they call it a hijack is because you still have the ability to think and to reason. And that part of the brain is in the neocortex, or the prefrontal cortex. It's in the front of the brain. And when you feel threatened, the amygdala, which is a small little gland, takes over, or at least that's what it wants to do. It wants to take over your rationale. It wants to take over your simple thinking. It wants to take over the logic aspect of the situation, because it feels threatened. And you have the opportunity to tell it to relax. Relax. You don't need to take over. You don't need to respond. You don't need to say something. You don't need to go on a rant. You don't need to lose your job, your income, your reputation, your integrity, etc., 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 etc. You just need to hold up. I'm going to process. And how you do that is you begin to do things that will allow your neocortex area of your brain to respond instead of your amygdala. So one of the things that you could do is you can start counting to 10, and you literally have to use your neocortex area of your brain, because that's the brain that has the logical thinking. So as you count in your mind, which is separate from your brain, your mind starts to say 1, 2, 3. So you go, right? And as you're doing that, you're focusing on the counting, you're focusing on the numbers, the digits, and your amygdala has to slow down and take its place, because your neocortex is functioning, it's working, it's time to do what it has to do, so your amygdala cannot come about. Another thing that you can do that will allow your neocortex to function is to take deep breaths. And when you take the deep breaths, you can either breathe it deeply, right? And you always breathe in through your nose and you exhale through your mouth. You can exhale slowly. And when you do that, you're working also the nervous system that will help you counter the other part of the nervous system. I'll explain. So we have the sympathetic nervous system, and then we have the parasympathetic nervous system. The sympathetic nervous system is the one that responds to the amygdala when it wants to either fight or flight. The parasympathetic part of the nervous system is the one that is used when we rest and digest. So when you breathe, you're actually activating the parasympathetic nervous system that identifies with your breathing in terms of restfulness, or when you're digesting your food. And so it counteracts the sympathetic part of the nervous system that wants to do something about what it is experiencing. Follow me so far? So you experience something, whether you see it, whether you hear it. Your amygdala, along with the sympathetic nervous part of your nervous system, wants to do something, whether to fight or to flight. So your mind, and this is all going on in your brain. Now your mind, which belongs to you, which you have all power over it, now your mind is going to decide to count. And this is just an example of an exercise you can do. It's an option. Or you can take deep breaths that will also activate the parasympathetic part of your nervous system, which identifies with rest and digestion. And what that does is that it has to allow your prefrontal cortex, or your neocortex aspect of your brain, which is the front part that uses your logic, your thinking, your rationale, to keep the amygdala gland, which is all the way back here in the bottom, and it's a nice, little tiny gland, to keep it at rest so that it doesn't act like it is being threatened and it has to do something. Okay? Your mind has the power to do that. You have the choice to say, I'm not going to go there. I see what I see and I hear what I hear, but I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to burst into, this emotional anger. I'm not going to rant. I'm not going to jeopardize my integrity. I'm not going to, all of these things that you can think about. And because the thing is that if you don't do that, because the amygdala is a gland and it secretes adrenaline and cortisol, your body literally, you feel, when people say that their ears feel hot and they get red and you feel all, that's adrenaline. That's the hormone that is giving you the opportunity to act, to empower you to do something. And cortisol, all of that is there. God actually put it in there in our brains. But it doesn't mean that it has to be used every time we feel some type of threat. And not every threat is an actual threat. Some threats are emotional threats that we have the power to handle. And even though there are threats, emotionally based threats that we probably should address, what I'm trying to help us say is this a threat worth dealing with in the heat of my anger? Or can I just allow it to subside and then deal with it or address it, if you will? So if you're at work if it's a manager, if it's someone or a coworker, someone that is offending you, someone that's saying something that is inappropriate, or calling you something, whatever the case is, what I'm trying to help you with is to say, you can still address the injustice, the inequality, the offense. You can still address it. Just think about the fact that your amygdala is trying to hijack your logic, your rationale, and that can get you into trouble, because although you may be justified in responding and dealing with the issue, the way you go about it may not be the best way. And that's what ultimately will probably either get you in trouble or cause you to lose any type of point that you're trying to make. Okay? So, you experience an event, you feel the rush of the adrenaline, the cortisol, you feel like you have to do something, say something, but that's all happening in your brain. Now, your mind is going to tell your brain, relax, I got this, let's count, let's breathe, let's think about this clearly, because I cannot allow you to hijack my reputation, my integrity, my means of income. Hello, somebody. All of these things need to be in their right place before I can say anything, if indeed I do need to say something. Okay? So hopefully that's going to help you to not respond to everything that you hear or see. Hopefully that's going to help you really, really think about what matters. And what matters is your reputation, your integrity, and your value system, your core values. That has to matter to you more than anything else. What happens also is that our conscious thinking gets affected, our censorship, and this is where, and I'll make another video about this topic. This is where cognitive biases come in, or unconscious bias, conscious cognitive bias, or unconscious bias. I'll make a whole separate video after that. That's why you need to subscribe. You need to hit that bell, because when these videos come out, you want to know that they're out and you're going to be able to listen and take notes, because I think a lot of the issues that we end up dealing with, we can deal with them better. We can, go about it in a better way, but we get caught up in the moment, or we have things that are already embedded in our heads and that we think are right without really, really thinking about why they're right or why they feel right to us. And so we get into trouble in many different ways. Now, this is something that I want to tell you, that I hope it helps you as much as it has helped me. Because anytime that you hear something that is life-changing, it's just amazing, and you feel so much better about it, and you can help other people with it. So if anything you want to write down, or even something that's tweetable from this podcast episode, this is it right here. And I'm going to read it to you because I had to write this down. Now, here we go. Events don't cause positive or negative feelings. We create them ourselves by the meaning we give them. Events, things we hear, things we see, people, whatever you want to label that. Events don't cause positive or negative feelings. We create them ourselves by the meaning we give them. Remember that. And the more you know that, the easier it'll be for you to respond accordingly when different things happen. Because if you live long enough in this world, it's not if it'll happen, it's when it'll happen. And I'll tell you a brief situation that I had to deal with recently. I was at an airport on my way home, back home. I was somewhere else. And at the airport, I try to find somewhere quiet, away from the gate, away from the craziness, even though, flying with the whole COVID-19 pandemic has been different. I was even one time on a flight that I was the only passenger on the flight, which was kind of weird. It was me and the crew, and I think 2 pilots that they were taken to the city I was going to. But in this particular airport, it was not as busy as as it's normally, but enough people, where you felt the little bit of crowdiness. And so I went to an area where the gate, I usually take the area where that flight just left, and so it's usually empty. So I'm sitting there, I'm going through some of my notes and my emails, and it's great. I'm by myself. All of a sudden I get a text message that we're about to board. So with the whole social distancing, I figured, I'll wait for everybody to get in on the flight, and I don't mind being the last one. So I see it as people are getting on, I'm getting ready, and I'm gonna go. And so, I have my mask on, I have my boarding pass, I'm ready to go. There are two people that actually joined the line behind me, so I was almost the last one besides the two people behind me. So I'm getting ready to show my boarding pass to the person attending there, and it's a young man, and for whatever reason I give him my boarding pass, and he doesn't scan it. He actually types in something, and he asks me, now we're wearing masks, so that alone is hard because you can't really I don't know, for some reason I like to lip read when I'm speaking to someone. It makes it easier for me to connect with what they're saying and with the meaning and so forth and so on. And with the mask, it's a little difficult sometimes for my hearing to focus on what's being said. And so he said something to me and I couldn't make out what he said. And then he lowers his mask, and with a very irate sense, that's how I felt that he was angry at me. He goes, "What is your last name?" And I'm like, I gave you my boarding pass. In other words, why are you asking me for my last name? I gave you my boarding pass. All the information is there. My first name, my middle name, my last name. I didn't tell him all this. But so my amygdala was trying to hijack all of my whole brain. Never mind the prefrontal lobe or neocortex. It didn't matter. My amygdala felt like it was 7 feet tall, and it was like, right? And so I said, I gave you my boarding pass. He's like, what is your last name? I didn't scan it. So I had to take a deep breath, just like I did now. And I'm thinking, I'm about to bust this guy's face up. But I'm trying to get home. I'm not, mind you, there was a layover that I had to do before I got home. So I'm thinking right away, my thought process went into, I'm trying to get home. If I beat this guy up, it's not going to be a good look, because somebody somewhere has a cell phone. They're going to record it. I'm going to be on every, prime time news. I'm going to miss my layover flight. All of those things. And I may even get arrested. So all of that came, through my brain as my adrenaline was pumping. Now, I already had 2 cups of coffee, so you could imagine how pumped I felt. And so I just said, Garcia. And he goes, get in the plane. And then his coworker said, just board the plane. I said, but what is the problem? Like, I'm trying to figure out what is going on. Anyway, nothing happened. I got on the plane. I was talking under my breath, under my mask. People are looking at me. They're wondering what's going on. I'm heated. I'm sitting in my seat on this hour, it wasn't even an hour flight. And I'm fuming, because I'm like, just like that, I had a great morning. I checked out of my hotel. I did what I had to do. I got at the airport, with enough time for me to just relax. And here is this instant, this moment that could have taken my peace, could have taken my joy, could have taken everything. I mean, just think about how bad it could have gotten if I would have allowed my amygdala to hijack what I was supposed to do, which is what I did. I just kept it cool. I did, show him that I was upset, and I was, not feeling his tone. But thank God, thank the Holy Spirit that I kept my cool, and I did not allow my amygdala to hijack it. So, And that's just one example, and it just happens so quickly. So please, please, please take note. These things happen so quickly, and then we just escalate them. The whole flight I was heated. I couldn't eat anything. I was just heated. Because it's been scientifically proven that adrenaline alone, never mind cortisol, but adrenaline alone can be in your body any time within 18 minutes to 4 hours. So up to 4 hours, this can last in your body. So if you don't take care of that, if you don't have self-awareness, if you don't have self-management, it can hurt you. It can hurt you. And so I'm trying to relax. I get to the next airport. I grab something to eat. I'm calming down. I'm a relational guy. I'm an extrovert. So a lot of the things that I experience inward, I have to get it out. And so I had no one to talk to. I had no one to get it out. So I just listened to some music and some podcasting, and on I went. So I get to the home airport. My wife picks me up with our daughter, and it's like I needed to say it, and I relived the whole thing again. So I say all this to say that it can affect us very badly. So we need to be aware. We need to be mindful of these pitfalls, these things that can erupt and can interrupt what we are meant to do. So please take notes. If I use some methods that I can help you with, if, for example, if you're dealing with anger issues, if you're dealing with outbursts, if you're dealing with some of these things that you regret and you're paying for them and you don't want it to happen again, just visit our website, juangarciaenterprises.com. There's a form you can fill out. Hit me up. I will get back to you, and I would love to work with you and help you, give you some tools and resources to help you grow and develop those areas so that you don't have to deal with the ramifications of your amygdala hijacking everything. Because that's what it does. This little thing, man, it's like a little chihuahua that keeps barking. It's like it wants to take over. It wants to take over, but you have the power. Your mind has the power to tell the brain how to respond. And that's powerful. That's why I always say they're separate but inseparable, because one affects the other, good or bad. So one of the biggest things that you can do if you're dealing with a coworker, a family member, sometimes in the family we have interactions that are unhealthy, or there's misunderstanding, there's so many things that can happen. The key thing is for you to just go back and force the thinking part of the brain. Instead of saying something that you're going to regret, something that is going to cause issues in the family, force the thinking part of the brain to take over. Don't allow your amygdala to hijack it, and think for a minute. How do I feel? About what? What am I feeling that about? And why? Process that. And then also, if it's someone that's offending you, someone that's coming at you, ask the same question within yourself about them. How do they feel? About what? And why? Because there's this word that can be inserted in that interaction that's called empathy. When you empathize, it just breaks things down. It breaks walls down. It breaks misunderstandings down. It breaks so many barriers that are created, because these things have the power to not only separate and cause division and barriers between relationships, but it destroys. One little thing leads to divorce, leads to lawsuits, it leads to dismissal of work, and we don't need that. We don't need that. Okay? So if you want to keep your job, you want to keep your relationships, you want to do better, do not allow your amygdala to hijack circumstances. You have the power in your mind to tell your brain how to act. See you next.
Thank you for tuning into our podcast. For more information, visit our website at juangarciaenterprises.com. Our host, Juan Garcia, is available for speaking, coaching, and one-on-one counseling. You can email us at info@juangarciaenterprises.com. Until next time, remember, we only have one mind, so mind yours.